Hi, so I've been introduced. My name is Toyin. I forgot my clicker, sorry. Yes, Arowolo. Uh-oh. Okay, so this is a short bio in bubbles, and I have 16 years experience in what I would term full stack development. So I've done everything from programming to testing to coupling, networks, application development, the entire thing. I think the most important title up here is mom. I'm a mom of 2 lovely daughters, they're almost 4 and almost 12 respectively. I'm a proud Nigerian, so a lot of you have walked up to me and said, oh, you look Kenyan. I'm Nigerian, sorry. So this is a proud Niger babe up here. I love gardening. I love data. I like talking sometimes, but this is just a little about me. So I have chosen a topic which is awareness. A key, it's not just the only key, but a key to a gender diverse tech world. And I will tell you my story and highlight why I chose that topic as we go along. There are many definitions of awareness, and I have a couple up here. Knowledge or perception about a situation or fact. A few synonyms. Can anybody tell me another word for awareness? Consciousness, recognition, realization. Any other words? Understanding, grasp. Some days you don't know anything, and the next morning you wake up and you're suddenly aware about something new, something interesting. And as we go along, I would explain why I chose this topic. So we would cover, as I tell my story, what awareness is about gender diversity, why, what it will do for you when you realize, as well as I hope my story would give you pointers about how to be aware, how to wake up. And I decided to tell this story because when I look back over the course of, maybe I should ask people to guess how old they think I am. Any guesses? Sorry? 32, oh, I love that answer. I wish I was 32, but I will take it. I'm not 32. Any other guesses? 37, you're close, you're close. 39, almost. Yes, I turned 40 in December. And when I look back over the 4 decades of my life, obviously I don't remember maybe like the first 5. I just have certain times where I have light bulb moments about things that happened or things that I was in the dark about, and suddenly I became aware. And from that point, my reaction, my action changed entirely, as you would see. So why is diversity important? Why do we talk about gender diversity? Maybe I should just lay a few ground rules here. I'm not here to make any argument about when women are better than men. That's not it. But why do we talk about gender diversity? The major reason for me is that the world is made up of roughly 50% men, 50% women. World Bank statistics say for every 108,000 men, there are 100,000 women. So it's important that in a field such as technology, where there's so much development, where so much has happened, it's very important that half of the world's population is taken along. It's important that women are able to do anything they want to do because they can. And that's why we're talking about this topic. So I have a few statistics here that would drive home that point. Okay, I think I should have been doing this from the beginning. I'm louder here. Okay, 16% of women graduate from a STEM subject. That's a global figure, so it's not an African statistic, but just globally. There are less than 25% of women in STEM jobs. That's very poor representation. Women are less likely to enter and 53% more likely to leave STEM careers. As Samira was talking, she's an example you've seen. about having to take a decision to leave work for one or several reasons. 20% of tech jobs are held by women. These are very low figures. But the interesting thing is, we can do something about this. It doesn't have to remain this way. There's certain companies, certain individuals, certain businesses that are actually working hard, making a positive drive to ensure that the numbers are no longer skewed. Another point I have is that research has shown that women who run companies, or when women run companies, those companies actually perform better. And there's a McKinsey study that has shown that they had this research done over 5 years that showed that for any company that had women on the board, at least 3 women, compared to companies that didn't have any women on the board of directors, their returns on sales were, I think, 84% more. Return on invested capital was almost 60%. And those are the kind of losses that you have when the entire world isn't carried along, when you have a skew in any society, in any business. And that's why we're talking about this today. So my goal today, and if I had gotten to this slide, then you would have known my age. This is, the red line shows sort of my trajectory about understanding bias, understanding diversity in my world. And I would say that it wasn't until we turned 40, I'm a twin, so myself and my twin sister turned 40 in December, that quite a lot of things came to focus for me. And I would go on to tell you a bit about my story. And one of the things I want you to do as I tell the story is just think back again and follow my story by thinking about your story. I hope that you'll be able to do that. So, like I had mentioned before, I'm one of a set of twins. We're born to a middle-class family in Lagos. Well, we weren't born in Lagos, but in Nigeria, and we grew up in Lagos. And even though my family was pretty liberal, I would also say it was quite traditional. That's a conundrum, but it was possible, and it did happen. So my sister and I, for instance, were not caged in. We were not told that there were certain professions or certain careers that only women could do. My father was quite liberal. He didn't. My sister now she's not a surgeon, but she's a doctor. And my dad was a surgeon, or is a surgeon, and so she followed after him. But he didn't stop her from pursuing medicine. And I am and was the first computer scientist in my family. Nobody knew what computer science was all about, and it was like, why did you decide to study computer science? But nobody stopped me from doing that. But before the age of 10, I had no awareness. I had no realization that there were actually girls who had been told your place was in the kitchen. So when I talked about my family being traditional, the men and the boys would sit in the sitting room. The women are in the kitchen. The women and the girls are in the kitchen. So even though we had that kind of dynamic going on, we were free to read as many books and progress as far as you wanted. And I wasn't explicitly told that my place was in the kitchen, but that was the way my family ran. So unless my mom wasn't around or she was ill, my father would never be found in the kitchen. After primary school, I went into secondary school and I attended a girls-only school. And it was the same. It was a federal government college. It had ideals, and I believe the government realized that the world was changing and women needed to play a more important role than previous generations. But I got out of school also without a realization that there were actually girls who could not proceed further than either primary school or even secondary school because they had been told or they needed to get married or they needed to do the things that women do. I left secondary school, and I would actually have to say that the only reason, or one of the reasons I'm in tech, is because of a teacher. I remember my final year in secondary school. Before this period, my math was woeful. So I think I liked math, but my results were not anything to be proud of. And he walked into class, my math teacher then, Mr. Olanikpekun. It was his first day of lessons, and he said, oh, some of you here are not doing too well in math. And I could raise up my hand because the best result I had gotten in math was probably a 6, that's a C6. And that was a fluke. It didn't happen very, very often. My normal grades were probably a few Fs, a few Ds, a few Es, sprinkled along very nicely. And when he said that, I thought, what's he going to say next? And the next thing he said was the sentence that changed my life. He said, some of you here are not doing well in math because you do not love math. Yes, I don't like maths. And maths isn't going to like you until you like it back. And I just thought, what is this man saying? Come out clean. But I'm happy that it wasn't just all talk, because he proved over the course of that year that it was possible to like math, and it was possible to do well in math. And just because I had that teacher, I'm standing here and I can tell you I'm an IT person. Because, of course, if you didn't have math, you couldn't proceed to university. And I remember going home after that year, my father saying, so what do you want to study? We had had this conversation before. And this time, not only did I say computer science, I said I was going to study computer science with mathematics. All my report cards before then had been, good grades except math. And he just thought, for goodness sake, why are you adding math to this? You're complicating things. But I knew that my final results, which hadn't come out by then, would be fantastic. And when they did come out, I cried. Not because I had failed, but because I hadn't done as well as I expected. I got an A3 and I was expecting an A1. But just one man was able to change the trajectory for me. And I imagine how many girls did not have Mr. Olanikpekun in their lives. And at the end of the day, they cannot or they could not fulfill their greatest dreams, their deepest desires to do either a science course or even be in technology. That was secondary school. So I went into university and I studied computer science with mathematics, and I did very well in it. I'm still proud of all the math courses I did and all the grades I got. But I also was not very aware that quite a number of girls had not been able to cross the divide from secondary school to university. My faculty, which is Faculty of Technology, which comprised of all the engineering departments, was the most skewed in terms of numbers. So representation for females was pretty low. It was probably 20, maximum 30%. My department wasn't so bad, but it was still bad. But instead of understanding the implications of that skew, what it did make some of us feel was like, oh, we're special. We're the few girls who were able to proceed this far. Pathetic, yes, but that was it. I started work, and that was when it hit me. All the places I worked in, irrespective of how many men there were not more than 2 women. So in a room full of 10 men, there would only be 2 of us, myself and somebody else. 50 men, 2 women. And that was when it dawned on me that there really was a problem. I became aware that there was a definite skew in terms of representation. And one of the things that going to work also did was, if you think back to my story about culture, I now started working with people who believed that the place of women were in the kitchen. They didn't know what to do with a very outspoken young woman. They had no idea how they should interact with a woman who was obviously educated, smart, and they just brought their culture to work, as I did. I do not believe they did this out of ill will. It was just all they knew. And I will tell you a couple of stories that would further explain a few of the things I have been talking about. The first story, which is, a work story, is the fact that when I started work, probably before I finished school, we had internships, but immediately after, about 2003, I finished in 2002, so 2003 was when I started working, and I got married in 2006. And I had a very traumatic birth experience for my first daughter. Those of you who were in, is it Amina? The first session this morning, the AI researcher. If not for God, I would have been on that statistic. And the sad thing was, I went back to work barely 3 months after such a horrible experience. I didn't have anyone to advocate for me. I couldn't even advocate for myself. This was a matter of, if you don't come back to work, you might not have a job. So I pulled myself together and got back to work. And I look back and I say, over the course of several months, I made such bad decisions in terms of my health, in terms of the pressure of work I allowed myself to get into. And I realized that after a while, that I was burnt out. And because of that, now this is not an excuse, it just happened, it was life. I also realized that the drudgery of work was getting too much. I was not motivated, and it did take one decision to apply for a mentoring program. At that program, I was assigned a mentor. I remember the panel yesterday, and I believe it was Samira who mentioned how important mentoring is. And that singular decision changed my life. I was assigned a woman. She's called Juliet Chiazo Ehimwan. She's Google's country manager for Nigeria. And this was somebody I could see who was female, who had done so much with her career, and who was also just like me. We actually attended the same university. She had attended the same type of secondary school I had attended. And it was so easy for me to see and believe her story and realize that because she had gone ahead, I also was able to do so. Following that experience, by the time I had my second child 8 years later, I was able, because I was now more confident, I was able to advocate for myself. So instead of coming back less than 3 months after, I asked for extra time. I was more confident, I believed in myself better, and I can directly trace that to my mentoring relationship with her. When I got back to work, also because of that relationship, I decided to step up and ask for more responsibility. So one of the first things I got after that relationship, which, by the way, has not ended. I call myself her mentee for life. And one of the things that it helped me do was ask for more responsibility. So I did. And I got assigned to coordinate an enterprise resource planning project for my office. We have 6 regional offices across Africa. It was huge, it was big, and it was a lot of work. One of the things that happened during the course of that project was I was dealing with external vendors, and these were men who were pretty toxic. They just did not want to take instructions from a woman, and they made it known several times, and of course it was back and forth, back and forth. And I remember I was a student at ALUSP, the business school, and I remember one of the intensives, we had a guest faculty come up, and she spoke about her experience. She was also Nigerian. She had run a huge multinational, and before she accepted the job, one of the things she did was ask for support. She realized that even though she had the title, even though she had what she would consider clout, she realized she was young, and she knew that the kind of society that existed, unless she had people backing her, nobody would give her full support. And what she did was she asked for it. And that was a learning point for me, because I just suddenly became aware that I had encountered so much opposition from these vendors, because even though on paper I had the title, but they didn't see who was behind me. That's just a learning point that I wanted to throw out there. Another story I would like to share is a story that you can learn from, and it's one that shows you're not powerless in a sense. So we have these weekly meetings at work, Skype meetings, and each week we would have these meetings, and I would start to say something when a colleague of mine would interrupt. It happened week after week, and I would get upset week after week. Until one day I just thought to myself, Tony, why are you getting so upset about this? Do something about it. And I picked up the phone immediately after one of the sessions and decided to give him, to tell him what I felt about it. He wasn't there. And I knew that if I put the phone down, work would get in the way, I would forget. The next week it will happen again and I would get irritated. So I said, okay, just type 3 lines, and I did. So I mailed him and I said, I would appreciate if you didn't do this again. I have noticed this is a trend. This is how it makes me feel. And that was that. I had even forgotten about it when I bumped into him the next day and he brought it up. And I said, oh, yes, about that mail. I would really appreciate if you did not interrupt me during meetings. And the most amazing thing happened. The next meeting we had, I found myself talking and talking and talking. I wasn't just talking because I wanted to talk. I had things to say. And not once did he interrupt me. And it was another light bulb moment, another level of awareness, when I realized, why did I have to take, in quotes, rubbish from people? Why didn't I stand up for myself? It seems pretty simple, and it seems, I don't know why I wasn't aware, but before then, I would just sit down and stew. But these are small things that you can be aware of and do something about. So in my stories, I have talked about awareness of environment, of people, the people you come across who have brought their culture and their tradition to work. Awareness of situations is important as well. And before we leave, which is the most important thing, what can we do about this? The first thing is advocacy. So for our men folk here, a lot of the time you have young women at work who have to go and who have to give birth. But how many of our offices have breastfeeding rooms built exclusively for women who need to express breast milk? It's a real need, it's a real concern. I would get back from, I got back to work each time I had given birth, only twice actually, but both times. And I would have to pump in somebody's office. It wasn't convenient, I used to hide myself, and because the door could not lock, so I would stay in a corner, and when somebody's about to open, I'm like, no, I'm here. Very embarrassing, but there are little things you can advocate for your companies to join. There are these initiatives, women at work, that have certain guidelines and have certain policies and help you, first of all, ensure that representation is a lot and what to do and how to take care of women who work with you. The next thing is, and I should have started by saying that, to say it's not about playing the girl card. It's not about saying, oh, I'm a girl, so treat me specially. Women, I know we do great work, but keep doing great work. Keep letting your light shine. Female role models, they're quite, if you went along with the story, a lot of women and a lot of girls, I realize that now, did not have the opportunities I had, did not have the opportunities I had to become who I am today. And one of the things that they so sorely need are role models. And in saying that, I would segue to the next point, get a mentor. Most of us wait until we're either in a certain position or seem to have certain things before we believe we can give back. You can give back. It doesn't matter how old you are. Just taking up the opportunity, like Samira did, to teach young people how to code, young women how to code, young women how to do things. Just allowing them to see you as an example would be a great help. And one of the things you should also realize, I won't talk about mentoring too much, is that reverse mentoring also happens. So don't think that you're just going out to get from this person. The older person or the more experienced person would actually also be learning from you. The last point is one that I think is the most important, and it's about overcoming imposter syndrome. And I'll just give a little story. It happens to the best of us. And I believe that women especially are most affected by this. The men get up and go and ask for promotions. The men are more, would actually be more, would be the first to go and ask for a raise. But how many women here have actually stood up and asked for either greater opportunity or a raise or just spoken up for yourself? A lot of the time, good, thank you. A lot of the time, what we find is that women sit back in a corner and think, oh, my work is going to speak for me. And a lot of the time as well, we also doubt the work we do, so we don't think we're as good as we really are. And I'll just tell a short story, and it's back to ALUSB again. Professor Duggan had requested that each of us call her so that she gives us our scores via Skype. And I remember speaking to her, and she had begun to tell me how, in this particular course, how well I had done. And I didn't think I did well at all on that course. So she went on and on. After a while, I said, sorry, just hold it there. I'm sorry, but my name is Toyin Arowolo, and this is what I wrote about. And she laughed. And I can laugh now because I realized that I had put myself down. I didn't believe that I was capable of doing such great work. And it happens to a lot of women. You're doing great work. You're doing amazing work. At this point, I want you to turn to a woman. If you're a man, turn to a woman. If you're a woman, turn to a fellow woman. And tell yourselves, you're doing great work. You're doing amazing work. Please turn, please turn. There are women in the audience. Yes, we're all doing amazing, and we need to believe that. So, I want to end with a quote that helped me believe in myself a lot. It's by Marianne Williamson, and I'm sure some of you know it. I will just simply read it as I end. Our deepest fear is not that we are inadequate. Our deepest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure. It is our light, not our darkness, that most frightens us. We ask ourselves, who am I to be brilliant, gorgeous, talented, fabulous? Actually, who are you not to be? You are a child of God. Your playing small does not serve the world. There's nothing enlightened about shrinking so that other people won't feel insecure around you. We are all meant to shine as children do. We were born to make manifest the glory of God that is within us. It's not just in some of us, it's in everyone. And as we let our own light shine, we unconsciously give others the permission to do the same. As we are liberated from our own fears, our presence automatically liberates others. Thank you very much.